Welcome, everyone. It's really great for us to see you here and to get a chance to speak with you about the Albina and North Portland libraries. What we'd like to do is first start off with just sharing a little bit about how we're going to connect and engage on screen. And I'm sure that you've seen this a million times before because you've been in lots of Zoom meetings over the last couple of years. But if you need interpretation today, we have 2 ASL interpreters who will be switching off, and their cameras will always be spotlighted so that it's very easy to see them. We also have English and Spanish translation. So if you would like English or Spanish or Somali translation, press the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and then select which language you would like to turn on. What that's going to do is make it so that you can only hear the translator. You won't hear my voice anymore, but they will be interpreting everything that we say, and you can follow along. So if you would like to see a live transcript, we've actually turned that on already, so everyone should actually see it. If you don't, you can look to the bottom of your screen and just press the live transcript button and press show subtitle, and it will allow the written text to pop up on the bottom of the screen. Start off with your cameras on if you would like. If you would like them off, that's fine too. This meeting is being recorded, so please do whatever is comfortable for you. And we ask that you just stay muted until you're ready to share when we're in discussion mode, or if you have a question, you can use the reaction button to raise your hand so we can see you, and we can take a pause once we're at the end of a section to answer questions. You can also use that reaction button to add any emojis to express yourself. And then a third way that you can engage is by using the chat feature. So at the bottom, you should see a chat button. When that pops up, there's a window that's separate that pops up, and you're able to type a message in here to everyone who's in the meeting. And if you would like to type a message just to one specific person, you can do that as well. So this is a drop-down menu, and all of the attendees will show up. You can scroll down and select them. So we're going to start off today with our land acknowledgements, which are really important. So here we're thinking about Native American Indigenous peoples in our area. And we have information from a really cool website that you may have seen before, nativeland.ca, but it's actually a really good resource to show you which Indigenous tribes are in which areas so that you can find where you live and find out who that land has belonged to. So the land beneath us were the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin and Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who've made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. We're honored to be guests upon these lands. In the same way that we acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that really still impact many Indigenous families today, we also acknowledge that the Black community in Portland has been displaced and harmed by a history of exclusion laws, redlining, and displacement. In very recent history, the construction of I-5, the Vanport floods, and the seizure of land for the hospital have caused harm and scattered the community. So we acknowledge those things because this is the land that we are on, this is the neighborhood that we are talking about, and this is all important history for all of us to acknowledge. So at the last meeting, at the end of September, we created some community agreements together, and I'd like to be able to use those agreements, but please use the chat to add in anything that you think that we may have missed and you would like us to share. So starting off, our first agreement is that your voice matters. We're all here because we want to hear from you, all of you. Second agreement is to stay engaged, but to take care of your needs too. So if you need to get a drink of water, if you need a bio break, anything, feel free to mute your mic and turn off your camera and step away for a moment, and we'll be here for you when you come back. Third agreement is listen to understand, because we are all teachers and learners. So that's especially true for the design team and folks from Multnomah County and the libraries here today. We're really here to learn and to listen to the community. Keep an open mind respect your truths and others' truths. So keep an open mind, just meaning that, we're all coming from a different place and we're here to listen to one another. Step up and step back means that we want to respect people's airtime. Raise your hand when you have something that you would like to share. And really, it just means that you're allowing space and making time for other people to also share their opinions. Is there anything that you think we should add or revise? If you'd like to add those in the chat, I'd be happy to take a look at those. And as we go through the meeting today, just let me know if there's anything that you think we should add back into it, because we're really just in the first phase and we plan to be doing community engagement a lot over all of the design phases. So this is something that can always be edited and be in flux. Excuse me. So next, I'd like to just share with you very briefly what our agenda is today, and then we're going to start right into some introductions. So today we're going to introduce a few people, then we're going to look at the library buildings as they are today, their current conditions, and then we're going to have a discussion which is based around what we've talked about at the last meeting, different themes that have come up, things that folks want in the library, and that we really hope to be a long enough discussion to really get some great feedback from you. And then at closing, we'll tell you what the next meetings are happening, and we're actually going to take a little bit of time for all of us to just hang out at the end. So if you have more questions at the end, feel free to stay and hang out with the design team. All right, so next we're going to go into team introductions. And the folks that you're going to be hearing from today are here on the screen. We have a very big team, but we have some special guests today that we're going to hear from. So commissioner and library administrators will be here to speak with us, and I'm going to give them a moment to share before we go on to the rest of the team. So Perry, you are
Thanks,
up.
Chandra. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Perry Gardner, and I am the administrator here at the North Portland Library. And as the North Portland Library administrator and a member of the surrounding community, I'm doubly invested in the library in Albina and North Portland libraries, which are a part of what we are calling the Chapter 1 projects. These projects will thrive when we hear from you, the community members who we see come through our doors or join us online. And that's why I want to thank you for joining us today as a part of the community engagement efforts, I look forward to hearing from each of you about what your ideas are for the future of these libraries, because your vision will help these projects become reality. And I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Commissioner Sushila Jayapal of District 2, who was kind enough to join us for this event. Welcome, Commissioner Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Perry, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming out on a Saturday morning. Although I have to say, if we have to talk about something at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, I think libraries might be a perfect thing to be talking about. Every time I'm in a library meeting, I go back to my childhood, and I remember the sort of feeling of anticipation and excitement I had when I walked into my library. I grew up in India and Indonesia, and we didn't actually have a public library system like the one that we're talking about, but I had a school library, and the feeling of walking in and having the librarian suggest a new book, or even better, a series, like 20 books in a series, was about the most exciting thing in my young life. So really glad to be here with you to talk about libraries, and thank you for joining us. As Perry said, I am your Multnomah County Commissioner for District 2. District 2 is North and Northeast Portland. It's everything north of I-84, south of the Columbia River, starts over in St. John's, and then goes all the way out to Northeast 186th. And so North Portland, Albina, these are my branches. Albina is my neighborhood branch. North Portland is the branch where I had my swearing in when I was sworn into office almost 3 years ago. So both of them really hold a special place in my heart. This library bond, it is, I think, one of the most exciting things that's happening in our community right now. And I am so grateful to voters, to all of you who voted for the bond. And when you did, I think you did so with the assurance that all of our work is going to center the community that we serve. So we take that commitment really seriously, and that's what this process is all about. As Perry said, this is part of our chapter 1. It's community outreach for some of our earliest projects, and Albina and North Portland are among them. It's one of several virtual meetings that we're going to have to hear from community. And one of the things that I think about a lot, and that I think we all thought about when we voted for this bond, is that these are buildings that we're building, but they're more than that. They are an investment in communities. When we think about institutions in our community, I think libraries remain one of the most democratic institutions that everybody has access to, and where people come together across difference. And that's one of the things it's about more than books. It's about all of the new possibilities that I think libraries are showing us as technology hubs, as maker spaces, studios, gathering spaces. So all of that is to say, what these spaces look like with all of those possibilities is up to you and to our community members. And your input is really going to drive our work, the library's work now and for a long time into the future. So I'm so grateful for you for being here. I'm looking forward to your ideas. I unfortunately can't stay for the whole meeting, but I'm going to stick around for a while just to get a sense of what you're talking about, and then I will quietly exit. And I just can't wait to see what we all create together. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. It's really great to have you here and to sort of share with the community sort of how important these projects are. And thank you, Perry, for being here also. And I know that you both have a lot going on. So I really appreciate your coming in at the beginning, and I know that we'll see you at another meeting again really soon. All right, I'm going to jump back into sharing screen here. Oh, sorry, there we go. Oh, sorry, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to share screen. I keep trying to represent what I've got going, and I don't need to do that. Okay, here we go. Now everyone should be able to see my screen again. So we just heard from the commissioner and from Perry, who is the administrator at the North Portland Library. Other times you will also probably hear from Eddie, who's the administrator at Albina. And these are the design team members that you're going to hear from a lot today. But we do have a really large team of Multnomah County and Multnomah County Library staff and many other design team members who are a very big part of this project. And you may have actually met some of them already at another Zoom meeting at the end of September, or possibly at the farmers market, and we'll be at lots of other events. So you'll get to see them if you haven't yet. So to share a little bit about the design team from Lever Architecture, we really are in the neighborhood and part of the community, and that's part of why these projects are so special to us. We've done lots of projects in the area, and our office is in the area, and actually if you look at all these little house symbols, this is where all of our staff lives. So we all feel really connected to these libraries and are really passionate about doing a good job. I'd also like to share that we work in other ways in the community as well, working with youth, talking about architecture, and creating mentorship programs very recently that kind of bring students even farther into the architecture profession. So if you know any young people who you think might be interested, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll let you know what kind of programs we have where we can engage them. All right, Tyler's up next.
Yeah, thanks, Chandra. Here's the overall schedule. We're in the middle of that first community engagement phase. I want to point out that we are going to do community engagement through the whole duration, all the way through the end of construction. But up front here in this kind of visioning portion is really the best time for the big ideas to come out, so that we can take it in stride once we actually do begin drawing things and designing. Yeah, next slide. Before I jump in and share some ideas about identities and experience, I want to do a quick recap of some thoughts that I shared the last virtual meeting at the end of September. Basically, our team is incredibly excited to work on these libraries because we see it as a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity to vastly improve, to reimagine and redefine these libraries, these frontline community resources, so that they can better support us all, offering the resources, assistance, and space that enriches or even is critical to some lives. And this opportunity at a time and at the center of neighborhoods whose communities need this investment, both functionally and symbolically. And we wanted to make it absolutely clear that these libraries are yours and that we aim to run a design process that keeps that in the forefront. So community engagement, if I'm being honest, I think the term feels a bit jargony, a bit formal, but in this community engagement phase, we're trying to do a lot. And part of that includes collecting some raw data about which services are your favorite, about what kind of seating you prefer, how you're getting to the library, you know, technical stuff, where you want to put more power outlets. That information directly helps us design the library, and it is important, especially later on. But we also want to collect more than just data. There's more to you all than just data. To design a library that immediately makes you feel welcome, a library that mirrors your unique identities, a library that you feel belongs to you, requires a different kind of feedback and a different kind of insight. After the hype around the library's grand opening has subsided and these libraries lose their brand new luster, what's it going to take for these buildings to be, to remain being pillars of your community? If anyone has an answer to that question coming into their mind right now, please raise your hand button. I'll wait. It's a complicated one. I'll bet the answer isn't data, though. Through this community engagement, we welcome you to share your truths so that you can be confident that we get you. This stuff can be uncomfortable to talk about, but we think it's so important because fundamentally, the way that each one of us experiences the world feels welcome, feels like they belong, feels connected, feels excited, feels the wonder. That varies amongst all of us. Our unique mashup of identities, our experiences, maybe what we ate for lunch, or if we didn't get lunch, it all plays a part in how we perceive things and what vibes we pick up. And today, as we ask for your feedback, we invite you to embrace your own identities. We'd love to hear your experiences, your stories, even if it's unclear on how we might use these to design libraries, because we're going to gather up as much feedback as we can and sit with it. And with your help, we're going to braid it into a set of design principles that will guide the design and the spirit of these projects, regularly circling back to make sure that we're on the right track. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chandra, who can explain the rest of what this community engagement phase might look like.
All right, thanks, Tyler. So I wanted to share with you just very briefly the schedule. Community engagement is really important. It's not just happening in this, first 3 or 4 months. It's going to happen all the way throughout the design process. So we've done a few meetings already. Here we are in November. Here we are today. We have some focus group meetings and some other stakeholder interviews coming up. And then in December, we're going to have another series of larger community meetings. And all of these series of meetings that we're doing with library staff, with stakeholders, with community members is going to happen all the way through schematic design and design development. And we'll even have some opportunities for folks to take early looks at the building in construction. So I wanted to share with you very briefly the different types of engagement that we were kind of showing on that calendar. So we do these large community meetings like what you're in today, where everyone is invited to participate and chat. We also do these smaller meetings that we're focusing on specific communities. We talk to the library staff, we talk to the library leadership, and we have a youth engagement program where we meet with students once a month and talk about design and talk about engagement. And that's going to happen all the way through the entire process. And then we also do these individual interviews with community stakeholders, leaders of community-based organizations, elders in the community, anyone who has specific information and knowledge about the different communities in our neighborhood. And those focus groups that we're talking about might be going into the Black community specifically and visiting people after church, going to SEI. We're also focusing on the Latinx community and reaching out by going out to different organizations at events that they're already happening. We're going to do the same thing with folks in the indigenous communities, the African immigrant communities, because we do have lots of Somali speakers here in the neighborhood, and the Asian community as well. So there are a lot of different ways that we're kind of reaching out. And these are some images of those larger community engagement meetings that we've had at the farmers market, the Zoom meetings, and the staff engagement as well. So you may have seen at some of the branch libraries, we've left behind some boards, and that's just in case folks were not able to come out to these meetings. We've left some information behind so that you're still able to give us feedback. And we'll have another series of boards that we leave behind at the libraries after this meeting as well. And if you think about the community stakeholder interviews I was talking about, those are stakeholders from kind of all throughout the community, a little bit farther out than you may think. Anyone who's really serving the community and supporting the community, we want to hear from them. So if you have any thoughts about folks there that we may have missed, feel free to enter them in the chat and we will make sure to reach out to them as well. And I wanted to just briefly pause and see if there are any questions. I'm going to go ahead and open the chat and see if there's anyone in there. And it looks like no one has given us any questions yet, but feel free to do that or to raise your hand. And I don't see the whole screen right now, so if someone can just let me know if anyone has raised their hand, we can stop and take a little break. But I think next we're going to hop out into the polls. So Kelsey is going to describe these polls for you.
All right, so we've got some Zoom polls to test out some features and get some pretty basic feedback from you guys. So the first question is, how do you use the libraries now? And feel free to choose more than one answer. I know I use it very frequently digitally and less frequently in person. So please go ahead and answer both questions. Our second question is, which libraries do you use the most? And I use Albina the most and North Portland the second most, so feel free to choose more than one answer for that as well.
Great, I can see people starting to answer questions in the poll. Thank you for adding those. Just gonna click back and forth through those. Give folks a couple of minutes to answer. And then Kelsey, I'll let you hold on to those for a little bit longer and make sure everyone's gotten a chance to answer before we end the poll. And then we have some consensus on there.
Looks like we're getting some good answers from everyone. Thank you for sharing with us. So we're going to go ahead and close out the poll in 5, 4, 3. Dramatic countdown. 2,
I know, I love it.
And 1. Okay, thank you guys.
All right.
So we can kind of share some results with you too. So it looks like we have a lot of frequent digital users, a lot of frequent in-person users. And Albina is definitely the most frequented of our locations right now for this meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so next we're going to hop on to the existing libraries. For those of you, and it sounds like there's not many, but for those of you who are less familiar with one or the other, I'm just going to scroll through some images so that you're a little bit more familiar with each library location.
All right, so you can see Albina Library is located in inner Northeast Portland between the I-5, kind of in the Boise-Elliott neighborhood, just on the other side of Irvington. So we're going to zoom in so you can see here the Albina Park and I-5, MLK, and then right here in yellow, the Albina Library. So we can zoom in even further. And you can see this site with the red roof is the existing Carnegie Library building that you're familiar with off of Knott Street. And behind it, these white warehouses are actually the Eisen Center and Book Delivery Warehouse, and those face Russell Street. So our plan is to preserve this existing building, and we're able to remove the operations and garage. so that we can use that site to build a whole new library. So I'll let Tyler go from here.
Yeah, a little bit of a different perspective. Here you can see the front of that historic library. Next slide.
That took a sec.
Yeah, we're adjacent to Northeast Russell Street, which, you know, right across the street is the Wonder Ballroom. We're adjacent to Rodney, the kind of parking lot side, and then Knott Street as well on the front of the library. What we wanted to kind of show you here is, you know, highlight the Carnegie Library, and the next, the property boundaries. Here, we really have a lot of space to work with, especially once we bring down the other buildings, totaling around 61,000 square feet. And the bond has allocated a sizable addition for this one. And it'll also include a district administration space. So there'll be, for the new building that's going to go on that site off of Russell, there's really a lot of flexibility here. So we'll get a chance to have a brand new building that connects with the historic part of the library.
And now we're just going to take a little walking tour starting on Knott Street at the front of Albina. So this building was opened in 1906. You can see the beautiful tile roof, the detailed wood rafter tails, the stucco siding. You can see this amazing terracotta tile entryway. So we're going to walk up the steps here and take a quick look at the returns box and then these window details that you can see. These beautiful emblems on the bottom, custom handmade tiles. And then we're going to take a step inside the library. So you can see, walking through these front doors, this back wall is actually an addition, not original to the library. You may be able to tell from this kind of funky glass, and the wood is different. So we're just going to turn to the left and look throughout the open space. You can see these low book stacks, the wood detailing tables. Here we're looking at the entry, the front desk and the entryway. Some details about the windows on the interior, seating and children's area, and then this beautiful plaster detailing on the ceiling. We're going to take a quick tour of the ISOM building from the outside. So here's that warehouse ISOM building that is coming down. So right now we're on Russell Street. To your right is the Wonder Ballroom, and to the left, that white stucco and concrete building is ISOM. Here it is. You can see these big trees marching along the sidewalk. Some nice restaurants across the street. And here's the current parking lot for that building. All right, for North Portland. Here it is in North Portland, closer to the Overlook and Humboldt neighborhoods. We're going to zoom in a little bit more. You can see that it's right next to that big field of Jefferson High School and just south of Killingsworth from the PCC Cascade campus. We're going to zoom in a little bit more. So you can see the site is quite a bit smaller, a nice little square shape here with the existing building, a darker roof color. And for this project, we're going to be maintaining the existing building, and we have a little bit of space you can see for an addition.
Yeah, so again, here, a different perspective. You can see the Jeff track and field kind of just behind. The main entrance here is off of Killingsworth, and there's a kind of current side entrance that isn't really used that much off commercial. And again, the building here, the site really isn't that big. So the amount of addition allocated to this one really is pretty small, pretty modest. But as we rethink the programs that are currently there and what we need to do to improve the performance and what little things we might add, there's opportunity for a small expansion here.
So now we're going to take a walking tour of the North Portland branch. You can see this beautiful brick building right along Killingsworth. And here's the side of it on Commercial Street. So we see this beautiful brick patterning, the concrete windows, and then this arched side doorway. Here's the front of the building. Oh, you can see this elevator addition to the left, that metal and glassy area, and then this brick elevator shaft that was added in the year 2000. Here's the front of the building again, showing some of the brick detailing and the ramp. And then off to the side of it, you can see how it connects to Jefferson High School and their track field. So now we're going to take a step inside the branch. You can see the reception desk in the front, this beautiful plaster ceiling detail. We're going to take a look to the right to see the tall book stacks around the outside and some lower stacks in the middle with a lot of community information available as soon as you walk in. Here's a bit of a children's area, and you can see that inside of those window casings, we've got a community pinup board. And then if we turn back to the right, you'll see more of the service desk and some of the book stacks in the background. And then if we turn to the right even more, we'll get into this back space with the beautiful wood vaulted ceilings and more of the book collections, as well as the computer center. And then this branch has a second floor, so we can go up these stairs or take the elevator and walk into this beautiful community room. You can see the wood vaulted ceilings and some of that detail here too. And before COVID times, this is the place where a community would gather and children's story time would take place up here too.
So we wanted to walk you through the libraries. We know that they're yours and you probably know the spaces relatively well, but we wanted to just kind of point out some of the historic character and just to have a point to mention that it's going to have an influence on design and how we attach to these buildings and how we think of the additions in the buildings as one. It's certainly going to influence how we do that. We know that it's really important to preserve that historic character. So as we move into design, that's something that's going to be important to us. On that last slide, I just wanted to point out the difference again in the size of the sites. Although we're doing community engagement at the same time for both these projects, we do want to point out that the opportunity to expand and include more services is different between the two. But at only a couple miles apart, next slide, we're kind of thinking of this as them being connected. So there might be a service at one that's not at the other. And we're kind of thinking of these libraries, especially these two that are pretty close together. But more broadly, the county will be operating around 20 libraries, is it, once we have the new flagship done. So it's really a network that we're kind of thinking about.
All right. If there are any lingering questions about the existing libraries, feel free to pop them in the chat and we can stop and discuss them. But we want to move on next to the big ideas. Michael Burns, you've raised your hand.
I see a raised hand.
Yeah, please share your question.
Yeah, hi. So my question's about Albina. So, it previously was used as a tidal wave used bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
What is the old building going to be used for when the library, as you are planning on it, moves, to the location of the Iceland building?
Well, the existing building will be part of the library. We haven't done the programming yet because we're starting off with engagement and trying to listen to community members about what your priorities are. And once we get into design, we will figure out sort of what fits into the existing building, but it will be part of it. It's not going to be separate. It's not going to be used for something different. It's going to be part of this whole new library and administration building.
Okay. Then I have another comment.
Sure.
So I appreciate that you guys are doing this process and that you're reaching out to the community and even taking advantage of Zoom, of doing it digitally.
Yeah.
But I feel like this process is really tainted because the Albina library that we're talking about now, the location, historically has not been the Albina Library for a very long time. And, you know, I was a longtime patron at the previous location at Northeast 15th and Fremont. And, you know, it's disappointing that you guys have not once this session mentioned that location. And I'm really disappointed in the library and the county for not making any effort to involve the community in picking a new location or in deciding where the location should be. That hasn't happened. And this was ongoing even before the pandemic started. I went into the library the day after there was a newspaper article published about this bond. And I asked people working in the library, I said, do you know about this plan to move the library? And they didn't even know. And they were working there. And, you know, there was just no effort, no outreach. There were no signs posted. And then when the pandemic struck, miraculously, the library figured out how to email everyone who was a patron at Albina and emailed to say that, you know, the library would be moving to its location that it hasn't been at for decades, because that was going to allow the library to reopen much quicker. They said it was a bigger building, it would allow people to circulate. And in fact, that never happened. Albina was the last to transition from curbside pickup at the end of the summer. So, you know, the location is a big part of the library and a big part of how it is part of the community. And I'm really disappointed that the community has been disrespected when it comes to that decision. So you know, the bond was says to invest in libraries, to expand them, and yet that's been used really as a cover to make a very dramatic change in how the community connects with the Albina Library. And you know, it's just very distressing to me that that you guys have made no effort to involve the community in that first major decision.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your thoughts. I really appreciate you coming here and being able to share this with library staff. It's important that everyone gets to speak their mind and tell us sort of what you're thinking about in terms of these libraries. And yet we do have folks from Multnomah County here who could speak to that a little bit, to maybe address some of your concerns. Katie, I don't know if that's you or Liz who would like to speak.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And okay. And Michael, I'm going to put my email too in the chat so that you have contact or connection with me, so we can always talk more about that. Yes, but
well, I'd like to also just mention that this is not the first time this issue has been raised. Back in June of 2020, I know that the Irvington neighborhood group had some meetings about this, contacted the library. There was an article published in the paper, and you know, there was no engagement from the library, and the responses I saw really showed no understanding. So this is not news to the library. I believe even the library director was quoted in that article. So again, this is not a new issue, and I think you know, if you want to go forward with this process and really believe that it has benefited and been guided by the community, you can't do that, honestly, unless you address the location issue. Because, you know, the old location at 15th and Fremont, it was at the intersection of 2 bus lines. It had great parking. It was located next to many other shops, so it was convenient for people who wanted to do, you know, one-stop shopping. The new location, it's located next to 1 bus line. It's a block away from a state highway. So many users are crossing MLK is, you know, not a fun experience, especially at rush hour. So, you know, I'm sorry, this issue just has not been adequately addressed. And if you want to consider this a process that's benefited from community engagement, you know, the issue of location needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Michael.
would be-
I appreciate it. I just want to give Katie a chance to respond.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I will, these issues, I guess, aren't as known to me, so I think I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm not aware of a June 2020 conversation, but I will look into it. I can be really clear that our new Albina library is going at the historic Albina Library home. That hasn't been a discussion or a decision point for the community. It was really the first.
And why not? Why not?
Because I will tell you, we did a lot of work in 2016 to 2017 and created a framework for our future buildings. And essential to the framework is getting out of rented space. And our Albina library in the rental space didn't have a meeting room, didn't have adequate place for staff. It was a teeny tiny postage stamp. And it wasn't actually very far either from the Hollywood Library. And so we had the opportunity from land we already owned to be able to return the Albina library to the Albina neighborhood and to expand it significantly. And those were the decision points around that. There wasn't going to be, there wasn't necessarily a need to locate and purchase our own land to be able to build in inner Northeast Portland, which in itself is a big challenge. But I'll tell you from the conversations I've been in, has been a great deal of excitement about returning Albina to the Albina neighborhood for serving the schools in inner Northeast and North Portland, the preschools, the middle schools, the community college in a more intentional and a different way than we have before during that time we were at Albina. So there was never a discussion point that we would ask the community to pick a location for Albina. What we're really here to do around community engagement is, what do we want these libraries to be? How can we utilize the opportunity of these funds and that trust of the public, which I know sounds like, you know, you had a different expectation of wanting to say where the building will go. I haven't been in any conversations that was ever on the table, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
and,
well, I think,
and I can just
sorry.
I just want to be super clear. That conversation, I would say, is past. Like, this is where the library is going. And you know, the Albina 15th space it was a rental and is nothing we're involved in anymore. So I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but I also didn't want anyone on the call or even you to think like there was going to be another round of trying to cite this location. It's been, that decision has been made.
Well, and I
Thank
think that's
you,
the
Katie.
problem is that you made that decision without seeking community input. And I did go on the website and look at documents from the bond. And, you know, you said you've never had any conversations where that's come up, but it looked like from those documents that the library was rather selective about who it did have conversations with. And, you know, I saw some of the groups that were listed earlier, Hispanic groups, Native American groups. And I put a question in the chat. I said, well, what about neighborhood groups? And, you know, or what about even posting? I'm glad you're posting the library, but, you know, back when this bond was going on, I didn't see any groups listed that had any, look like they were somewhat local to the areas the library served. Like I said, there was nothing.
Just so that we can continue on with the event today and the purpose.
Yeah, but I just want to finish. Excuse me, I'd like to just.
Michael, to reach
I'd
out
just
and
like to
email
finish.
me that
Okay,
I've included, and then we can have a really good conversation, I think. But I just don't want to take too much more time of this event in something that is
but
decided.
I do want to point out is that this was never posted in the library. You have a great way to communicate with users, patrons of the library. Never once was anything posted in there about, the idea that the library was going to be moving locations. Okay. I mean, it's free. You put up a poster, don't
Michael,
even have to mail.
Thank you. I think that's a good point, in the library folks who are here have heard that there has been an issue with communication. And I think that it'd be really great for you to reach out to Katie and to check out the framework of library spaces that Liz put in the chat. And reach out to Katie with any additional sort of questions or conversation that you'd like to have, because it is really important. And I know that they do want to hear you. I do want to move on, though, to some other discussion of library themes, because as Katie said, we are really wanting to hear from community members about these specific libraries and what priorities are. So I'm going to jump over to that momentarily. Liz, I saw that you had your hand up. Was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think that Katie covered it beautifully, but just, wanted to direct to the framework for library spaces, since Katie just briefly mentioned that the site at 15th and Fremont was leased, and just, in the best interests of voters and, efficient use of bond funds, trying to get away from the leased spaces since the Albina Library building is our library building. So thank you all.
Thank you, Liz. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about library themes that we heard in the previous community engagement meeting that was at the end of September. And I think, Kelsey, you're going to jump in on this one.
Yeah, thank you. So in our last meeting and posted at boards around the community, both within the library spaces and in community centers nearby, we've been putting some of these inspirational photos out for folks to gauge, to be inspired by what a library space could be. Libraries these days are more than just rooms with books and silent reading. And of course, that's always going to be an important aspect to them. But what more can they offer their communities? So we can see that library spaces can be both quiet and active, that they can connect to nature, both indoors and outdoors, that they are supportive and collaborative within their neighborhoods and communities. They provide flexible spaces for different types of programming. We can see that they're inviting and that they're spacious, and we can design them with intent to invite the community in. We can focus on children's spaces and designing spaces that are sized for children to explore and discover. Teen spaces for teens in the community to gather, to do their homework, but also to hang out, to use technology that's not readily available to them, and to meet other teens in their community. And for discovery, both cultural sharing and technology. We focus on people and collections. We can explore cultural connections within our communities and across Portland. We can support careers and small businesses in library spaces with meeting rooms, printing, technology, and financial assistance. We can bridge generations using different programming and different flexible spaces with crafts, with technology, and with storytelling. So this is kind of what we've seen from some of you guys who have voted with little heart stickers on which themes and spaces are important to you, and to hear what kinds of spaces really inspire you that you feel would really support your community. So we wanted to ask another quick question of you. And let's see, I think I'll ask Tyler if he's able to launch this poll, but give you another opportunity to share your priorities about which themes are most important to you. And you're welcome to choose more than one answer. And we'll see if this poll works. And if it doesn't, I invite you to just drop it in the chat.
Yes. Yeah, which of these key themes do you think are most important in these two new library spaces that we're creating, Albina and North Portland? And if you think different things for different libraries, put it in the chat. Tell me what you'd like to see at Albina versus what you'd like to see at North Portland.
We have a rich network around these two libraries, and recognizing that the Albina Library location is catty corner from the Dishman Community Center, we're able to work with them to provide a more broad network of more broad network of programming. And then also recognizing that it's near open signal, and maybe there are opportunities for collaboration there. So we're really excited to kind of expand into the community and see what more the libraries can provide.
And I see a note in the chat that poll number 5 is up. Is that the correct poll, Kelsey? That should be up, asking about themes, or Tyler?
Oh.
This is Suzanne. I don't see a poll on my end yet.
All right, well, we can kind of just go over this. We can kind of just move on.
Looks like there's a poll. Okay, let's jump to the next page.
All right, and so we've also been asking you some questions in our previous meeting, and again with these interactive boards placed throughout the community and the libraries, just to get your sense on what you'd love in these library spaces. So what makes you feel welcome in a space? How do you want the library to make you feel? What makes you feel inspired to learn? What do you need in your life that the library can provide? And what do you love about your libraries now? And then lastly, what is on your wish list for your library? And so we've gathered a bunch of information from written surveys, from our trips out into the park, from our other Zoom meetings, from our Miro sessions with teams. And so we've heard so many different voices, and a lot of folks are saying some of the same things. So you can see that the words that are bigger are themes that more and more people have expressed in their wishes. So what makes you feel welcome in a space? And most people say that friendly and helpful staff makes them feel really welcome. You can also see windows and light are really important, a variety of spaces and activities, connection with their neighborhood. And please share in the chat if you have answers to these questions, and if you don't see any answers that you're looking for already written. So we'd love to hear more from you. How do you want the library to make you feel? Most people want to feel welcome and included. They also want to feel happy, relaxed, calm, inspired, curious, focused, expansive. What makes you feel inspired to learn? We hear that events and classes really inspire people to learn, both being in them and seeing them happen. People love learning from their peers. Children's activities are really inspiring. Technology, equipment, and tools can inspire people to learn and try new things, and making connections both with the content that you're learning and with the folks around you. What do you love about your library now? A lot of folks have really appreciated the well-curated collections, from audiobooks to major newspapers to really specific collections. Folks have really loved that about their libraries now. They love their friendly staff. Some comments were made on those beautiful North Portland ceilings, and I would even add the Albina ceilings, still very beautiful. And that they're easy to use. You know, there's some great digital tools that make holds and checking out books very easy. But there's a lot of needs that people have in their lives that maybe these libraries could help support. So especially right now during the pandemic, a space to work, a place to just be quiet, focus, take a Zoom call. Another big need among the community is a place for kids to play when they're not in school, or if it's a rainy day. where can kids go to learn from each other, to play, to maybe be loud, to be creative? Help with financial literacy is a theme we've been seeing both for adults and for kids. A comfortable destination, that third space that's not work, that's not home, a space that you can just go meet some folks in your community and read a good book. And what's on your wish list for your library? Most of the answers had a theme in common, and that's that they wish for their library to be the living room of the community, a real gathering place for everyone. Many people also would love to see play spaces, more languages, both in signage and in book offerings, outdoor spaces, some comfy chairs, lounge chairs, a fireplace, maybe some bike parking. What about a theater or a creative space for projects and art? What about a big comic section, longer hours, a family bathroom, even some deaf inclusive communication and materials, and trans inclusive bathrooms. So how can we support all members of our community through these new spaces? So we'd love for you to add any other ideas that you have, any other wishes that you have for these future spaces.
Yeah, you can feel free to add those in the chat. The poll, it sounds like, popped up for some folks, but not for others. And so we're going to ask you to share the themes that you think are most important in the chat so that we can add these to the voting that we showed you earlier, and we can get these into the presentation for next time. But feel free to put those in the chat. And again, Tyler put that in there. So it's connecting to nature, support and collaboration, bridging generations, focus on careers and small business, children's space, teen space, people and collections, and cultural connections. And I'll go back through these slides so that you can see them again and see what other folks have put in there. But we have a little bit of time here, so you can feel free to take a few minutes, maybe take 5 minutes and kind of think about these and decide which ones you'd like to add in. And we can also discuss anything that's not on this list. So if you think that we have excluded something that's really important, feel free to raise your hand and we can talk about it and hear what's important to you so that we can add this in. So again, I'm just going to go backwards through this. Go ahead, Kelsey, what were you going to say?
We have these questions also in the libraries right now. So if you think of something later on, EV chargers, that's great. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah. So wish list for your library.
Yeah, anything that you could want. I think in our park meeting at King Park, at the farmer's market, a young boy was wishing for a shark tank.
Yes.
And maybe a ball pit as well. So we'll see what we can do. Yes. We had some great ideas from our teen groups for really specific, very whimsical things like a room that's filled with plants or secret passageways through the book stacks. So anything, that you think is fun and exciting to you, that inspires you, is just great to hear. Thank you, Kristen. Spaces that draw support teens, careers and small businesses, connections to natural light and nature. Yeah, we have some really great natural resources here in Portland, and I can imagine just being in a space with big windows surrounded by lush trees, curled up on a seat reading a book. So I'm really excited to start working on these spaces together with you guys so that we can enjoy them. Big selection of books and magazines. Yes, Michael, thank you. Lots of computers and scanners, including oversized, large scanner. I love that. Thank you, Michael. That's super important.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. There's a lot of love for the libraries now also. A lot of love for the library staff and how helpful they are and the beauty of those historic buildings. Easy to use, easy to get to.
And so we actually have some new questions to get to as well. So maybe I'll hand it over to Tyler to talk about identity really quickly, and we can we can take a look at these new questions through a lens of identity.
Yeah, so to kind of return to what we talked about earlier about identities and how we think it's important in how you experience space. So we're not necessarily going to kind of like collect data about which people of which identity said what, but we just want it to be present in your own minds as you sort of answer these questions and kind of embrace your perspective and where you're coming from. So first we can share kind of our team's own identities. Chandra, you want to start?
Yeah. So I identify as a lot of different things, and to Tyler's point, that is my experience of the world is through the lens of my own identity. So I identify as a Black woman and a Mexican woman and an adventurer and a daughter and a Portlander and many other things, but those are kind of the top ones that I are really core to my identity.
And I identify as a woman, also as a mentor, as a Swedish descendant, as a granddaughter, as a creative person, as a traveler, as an Irvington neighbor. I love my community and my neighbors, and as a person with anxiety, seeing the world through these different experiences, or thinking about the world through these experiences really gives me compassion to think of what others' lenses are and how they're experiencing the spaces around them differently, potentially, than how I'm experiencing them.
I identify as a Hapa, which is I'm half Japanese and half white. My Japanese side of my family came over here 4 generations ago, and I've been in Portland. So I feel like we've been here for a long time before there were Segway tours and this craft beer stuff. I'm a husband and I'm a father, and I think having the perspective of having a little kid, especially kind of through the pandemic and all that, gives me a different kind of perspective on how another person might experience space and kind of just a different awareness. I'm also a cis man, and I see myself as a designer, and I think that designer one is, especially when we're experiencing space, is a big one for me, because I know intimately that all the spaces we experience are crafted around us. Someone designed it. It's not just the environment that is the way it is. Everything that we kind of experience was a decision, and I take that kind of malleability into projects like this, where if there's something that's not working and we have this opportunity with the bond, like, let's change it. This is the time to be thinking about that stuff. And so hopefully we can kind of share that perspective and get everyone thinking about the possibility of just making it the way that we want it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about my identity as a daughter, and because my mom has limited mobility, I actually see space a lot in terms of like, can I get my mom in there or not? How hard is it going to be if this is a place she wants to go to? So I think that also is a big deal for me, thinking about space and thinking about others in space. So thanks for sharing that, Tyler. Oh, thank you, Michael, for adding that book scanner in there for me to check it out.
So we have some new questions for you at this meeting that will then go into the library and community spaces. But through the lens of your own identities, we'd love for you to think of some answers to these questions. So we have a poll that may or may not work, but we'd also love for you to just drop your answers in the chat, or we can have some conversations about them. The first question being, what are your dreams for Albina and North Portland? And you're welcome to focus on one or the other, depending on where you're located or what your experience is. The second question being, what can make these libraries specific to each community? What's unique about North Portland? What's unique about Albina? And how can these libraries reflect that? The third question, what does an investment in a library and a community look like? The fourth question is, what is one challenge and one opportunity you see with these projects? And the fifth question is, what would a library need to have for you to use it or use it more often? So maybe that's a big playground. Maybe that's, you know, more parking or covered bike parking, or a little cafe so that you can stop for a treat on your ride home and pick up your books.
These are all big questions, so we have time for folks to think about them, take your time, fill them in. Can anyone see the poll now so we know that it's working? Any attendees able to see the poll? Just give us a thumbs up or something if you can.
The poll is these exact questions that are on screen. So if it's not working for you on your end, it might be a different version of Zoom. Feel free to write your questions in the or answers to your questions. Just kind of number them Q2 or Q1 in your response in the chat. Or if you prefer not to write it down, and if you have it in your head to any of these, really, just feel free to speak up.
Yeah.
We'd love to have a discussion around them.
Yeah, that's a good one, Larissa. Not having to navigate so much noisy traffic.
Yeah, it's a big change to go from a busy street like Killingsworth to a quiet library space. So maybe there's some things we can do around the library so that you have a more peaceful transition. I know as somebody who lives just a few blocks from Albina, my dream is that it becomes, you know, that area it's not been well used. It's so my dream is for that space to be more community gathering, like that community living room that folks were talking about. To really bring people together, especially folks who have kind of been pushed away from the area throughout the years. And thinking about what makes these spaces unique to Portland, to North Portland and to Albina. These neighborhoods both have really rich histories. So I think that reflecting and sharing some of the neighborhood history will be really important in developing these spaces.
I really like visitors and neighbors. I really like question 5. What would a library need to have for you to use it more often? And I think that Michael added in a few things in there that are really useful that would, you know, make you come to the library more often. Scanners, more computers, magazines. That would also make it very much a living room type space if you could just come in and read some magazines for a little bit when it's rainy outside and then head back home.
Yeah, for Albina, really important to create open face buildings that draw people in, even if they don't enter their library itself. Yes, outdoor space where people are inclined to experience it, to rest, to meet. Kristen, thank you so much. That's great.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, a really inviting space. So you can kind of see what's happening in the building, even if you're not planning on stopping by at that moment, that it sort of invites you in and lets you know that this is for you. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges with these projects. Some of you have already voiced those, but also opportunities come along with those challenges. So maybe the opportunity is that, you know, the ISOM building isn't used by the public. So to make that corridor a little bit more public seems like a great opportunity to me, along Wonder Ballroom and Russell Street, and to activate that space more seems like a great opportunity.
Yeah, instead of walking by a parking lot, right? There's like beautiful library spaces, buildings, outdoor spaces. You see families and kids in there. Something exciting is happening. A space you can actually use. All of those would be great.
I see, Kristen, you have your hand raised.
Just curious. I was just curious to continue to think about, like that part of the world, that part of the neighborhood where you do have the Wonder Ballroom, and back in the olden days when people were gathering for the concerts or, just to kind of, it's this little stretch. And is there some way to kind of benefit from that activity, vice versa, where it's kind of more of a blurred plaza, just because there's, those are cool spaces, or they were. I don't know what it's like lately, but I just remember when I have gone there, that dead parking lot, is there a way that you can kind of capitalize on other stakeholders in that particular block or whatever to have some sort of, or just even like event blurring? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, libraries have community spaces, right? So you could imagine having a community space that's up against the Russell Street side, so that when there's activity happening across the street and at the library, it's really lively.
Yeah, even at night, I could almost imagine like a read while you wait section or something where it's like library for nightlife.
Yeah.
We can sort of think about how the neighborhood changes throughout the time of day and what's available to everyone at those times. That's really exciting, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that idea of it just being a big public plaza.
Yeah, something that could be used even when the library is not open, right? Something that has some seating, some nice landscape, nice buffer from the street. I think there's a lot of great ideas there.
Well, we have one more little activity for you guys. And so that's to do a Mad Lib, to just fill in the blanks. We've got 2 questions and they're about the future of the library. So imagine that we've gone through all this work, you've given all your input, and now the libraries are built. You walk in the door, what do you see? What does it look like in your dreams, best case scenario? So the first prompt is: the new library is a blank place where blank can blank. So maybe that's the new library is, a really quiet and peaceful place where my family and I can go to nestle up with a good book. Or maybe the library is a really lively place where teens can get together after school and play guitar. So we'd love for you to kind of think about how the spaces will function and just fill in the blanks for how that looks to you. Oh, Larissa, thank you for dropping that in the chat. Yeah, that's really important. How libraries serve as shelters. Food and books don't mix, but maybe it could be good to consider emergency use context. Yeah, we've definitely experienced plenty of emergencies the last couple of years with smoke, air quality, flooding, storms, ice, heat, pandemic. There's a lot of things that these libraries need to be prepared to do for the community in terms of safety.
I'm gonna go to Mad Lib number 2.
Yes.
See if anyone has thoughts on that one.
Multi-purpose is a word that keeps coming up. Yep,
that's great. Yep.
So the new library is blank because it has blank and blank. So maybe the new library is a great resource for my small business because it has oversized scanners and a computer lab with technology that I don't have access to. Maybe the fastest, newest machines or high quality cameras.
Kelsey, that was a wild Mad Lib. You put like whole paragraphs in the blanks.
I know. Or you could just do some simple one words. The new library is cool because it has this and that.
No, it was impressive. It was really good. Yeah. The new library is homey because it has comfy seating and coffee bar. Could be anything. Thank you, Suzanne, for putting that in there.
Large, quiet space for reading and research. Yes.
I love it. Creative space. Larissa, do you have any thoughts about what kind of making you might like to see at the libraries? What do you think about when you think about making and play?
Okay, I'm just going to unmute myself for a moment.
Okay, great. Do it.
I'm an industrial designer, so I have been thinking about community maker spaces for a long time. I think about when I think about what that would look like, I think for me, library means opens up the opportunity for smaller scale crafts. I'm Japanese. I like to fold origami.
Cool.
I know it's just like, it's really nice to think about, little kids can go read their craft encyclopedia and then find a craft and then go have the tools and to go maybe do a workshop at the library. And so this can be, the tools are pretty simple, craft-based tools, but you could take it a step further maybe and have a little 3D printer or a laser cutter or those types of things.
I love it. That's great. Thanks for elaborating a little bit on that. I know there's one library that has a maker space, but I just like hearing about what kind of making people are interested in doing, right? Because it could be anything.
Yeah, and I love that idea of the connection between the access to the books and then the access to the resources to actually have a hands-on connection between maybe what you're reading about and then to be able to practice that in a space nearby.
I was also just listening to
Tyler has origami.
This improv club. So the idea that I love that, I think it was the North Portland reading room. It just made me think of Little Women and like putting on plays and doing costumes. And so I don't know, just the idea of theater and having just more expressional outlets for kids, plenty of creative expressional outlets for kids.
I love it. That's great.
My daughter would be all over that.
Yeah, I like the idea of like a craft library, a technology library, a tool library kind of thing. We do have tool libraries in neighborhoods. But that could do a lot. And I was very impressed by your giant fox origami, Tyler.
I just was holding it close to it's not that big, but.
Well, yeah. We're holding it close to the camera.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really fun. We have a couple of minutes left, and I just want to share with everyone on the call what's coming up next. And that's a great question, Michael. And I think that those are things that we're thinking about, as well as sort of all the things that community members are excited about having at their libraries, which ones make sense to have at North Portland, where there's only going to be a small edition, versus which ones make sense to have at Albina, which is going to have a much larger building on it. And so I think that's exactly the same as things that are being offered at Dishman, things that are being offered at schools already, at PCC, at Jefferson, because the libraries really are a network that support the community in different ways, and they're all different. So I think that point is very well taken about understanding what resources there are in the community already, that either the libraries can help support by making space for them, or can help support the community by referring folks to some place that's really close, like across the street, like Dishman. So I really appreciate that. If you have other comments and thoughts about things, you can always reach out to us at libraryspaces@multcolib.org. You can follow the Multnomah County Library Instagram, and they will post meeting notices that are happening. We will be having another digital meeting coming up on December 8th, Wednesday, like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. And that will be in the evening, sort of after 9 to 5 kind of work hours. So we'll make sure that we are posting, as we have been, at the libraries, online, and in various places around the community. We've been dropping them off at the community centers, at stores, at kind of any place that folks will let us put up a poster. We've been doing that. And also emailing folks about these meetings. So we do hope that we're going to see you again at another one. This is not the end of community engagement. Like I said, we're doing this all through the design phases. So you will have the opportunity to see design as it's starting and provide feedback on that. And we're really excited about this. And I do absolutely really appreciate all of you being here today and giving us feedback and asking questions and asking the hard questions and asking for more ways to get more information. It's been really great. We're actually just going to hang out here for a while. So if there are more things that folks want to chat about, you are welcome to stay in here with us. We'll hang out for about 15 minutes. But if you hop off, we will see you at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. Absolutely.
Yeah. I know there weren't a ton of people on the call today, but like we said at the beginning, it is being recorded. And I think once we get some captions pasted onto the bottom of the video, our intent is to share it. So if that's something that's important to you and you want to share it with other friends, shoot us an email at the one that's listed here on the page. And we'll be sure to send out a link for once the video goes live.
Yes, and there was a representative from Commissioner Jayapal's office, and she had put her contact info above. I'm trying to look for it to copy it back into the chat so people can find it easily. There it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy that and then repaste, and that was from Monique. And there we go, so that you can reach out to the commissioner if you would like to. I think now is when we're supposed to have a DJ. I didn't schedule a DJ for us to like hang out on Saturday morning for like 15 more minutes, just chatting about whatever.
Coffee talk.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna stop sharing so that you can see people's faces again. Yeah, there we go. Yes, thank you, Ahmed, for coming.
Hey,
thank you to all of our interpreters. Thank you for our ASL interpreters.
It's great to have you.
I just want to say thanks to everyone. This was really fun and a fun thing to do on a Saturday, talk about libraries.
Yeah, thanks, Larissa.
Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you so much.
So glad you could join us.
Yeah.
See you later.
Let's see, we have Ahmed, we have Ruth, we have Bashar. Perry's still with us, which is awesome. At another meeting, hopefully we'll have Eddie come and hang out with us for a while.
And Eddie was in this meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, he was, you're right.
Yeah.
I saw he noted about the poll. Yeah, he said poll 5 was up. But hopefully we'll give him some time to speak. At the library and share with us anything he wants to share. I think that would be awesome.
I'm curious too if the interpreters that are here, if you happen to use any of the libraries, if you have thoughts, please feel free to share as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Last meeting we had breakout groups, and I actually had all the interpreters in my breakout room, which was really funny. But so we definitely chatted about libraries then. But Bashar and Ahmed and Ruth and Talia, if you have any thoughts to share about libraries, we'd love to hear it.
Tara.
And Tara, thank you. Yes. And Heather. So many, and Heather, of course, Heather's right in front of me right now.
It's such a joy to watch you guys sign. I am loving it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Harry, did you do the Mad Libs? What did you think of those? I thought they were really fun. I wanted to do a bunch of different versions.
Yes.
Yeah,
we'll print those out so that folks can have them in the library and just fill out like tons of them.
Yeah, I think that would be great. We can make a little booklet of library Mad Libs.
That would be so fun.
Yeah. With some like illustrations and some pop-up origami in it.
Michael, I see you unmuted. Were you going to share anything?
Yeah, in the early part of this meeting, you showed a slide of the community groups that you had reached out to, and I just want to know why you didn't list or mention any of the neighborhood associations.
So what was on that slide is not complete. It's just kind of a snapshot of here's a bunch of things, but we actually have these very long spreadsheets that have, I feel like there's, 150 different organizations on there. And so not all of that is happening right now. We expect all of that to happen throughout all of the design phases like the rest of the community engagement does. And so we will definitely reach out to folks. I know they're on there.
Okay,
so if there are very specific ones, you can put them in the chat.
Well, are you familiar with the neighborhood associations? Do you know if there's been any outreach to them? Do you know if they're on the list?
I think all we've done so far is send out some emails to folks. Tyler's going to share.
Can y'all see my screen over here?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so these are the ones that we're tracking in there. Is there one in specific you're thinking of?
Well, I'd say the ones that encompass the libraries and ones that are nearby. And
yeah, we have all of those on this list. Looks like you're listed.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to them yet, but we'll do that soon because it makes sense.
Yeah, for all those we have contact info.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that in this community engagement phase, I think we certainly want to be able to have people come again to provide ongoing feedback. So we certainly welcome people to keep showing up, but in any event, it's quite possible that it's their first time engaging with us too. But the bottom line is that through this engagement phase, it's not a first come, first serve. So if we missed you at an earlier one, or if we catch people later on in the process, our ears are always open. And yeah, so we haven't reached out to these neighborhood organizations quite yet, just because there's been a ton of other outreach that's happened before now. So but we're certainly tracking lots of organizations. So I just kind of scroll up and down this list here. It's a good list.
Sorry, the color coding, does this reflect who's been contacted and who hasn't?
They're categorized. Here's schools, here's community centers, community-based organizations, accessibility-focused organizations, neighborhood-specific organizations.
Okay, but I see you've got a column for priority. Why?
Parks.
How do you determine which ones are priority organizations?
It's a great question. We usually it's when multiple parties have reached out and recommended that we connect with people, or if we feel like there's a specific group of people that we want to reach out to and connect with, because we feel like maybe their voices historically haven't been featured in outreach processes. I think historically design practices have done community outreach in a way that makes it easier for some groups of people to show up and provide feedback than others. And so the resulting design caters to those groups that are able to do that. And some of that's, completely on the design team for doing outreach that was convenient for us. So in this one, particularly early on, we've tried to reach groups that might have been historically overlooked, or they have more challenges in connecting with us. So that's what the priority right now indicates. But as we move through the phase,
can you just scroll down that spreadsheet? Can you go back down to the community groups?
What are you specifically looking for, Michael?
I just wanted to see who's been selected as priority and secondary, and
this is a live document that we edit very frequently. So what you're seeing now doesn't mean that other folks aren't a priority at a different time. So I don't think that sort of reviewing those check boxes is super helpful, because it just depends on kind of feedback that we get as we go through who we need to prioritize next to make sure that we reach out to.
Okay,
hopefully that makes sense.
What does YODA stand for? YODA Outreach.
Tyler, can you stop sharing?
Yeah.
YODA is our Youth Opportunity Design Approach, which is where we are engaging students in the area. So youth 13 to about 18 years old, maybe a little bit older, and we engage them in the design process. So here's where we're talking to students who are interested in libraries specifically, or architecture and design, and we take them through the design process. So we meet with them monthly, and we've so far done a couple of meetings where we do tours of the libraries. We talk about community engagement. When we're in schematic design, we're going to talk about design and site planning and all that kind of stuff. When we're in design development, we're going to be talking about detailing and selecting systems. And it's really for students to get a really close look at not only library design, but architecture as well. And a lot of these students are ones who have expressed interest in these kind of programs in the past, some from Jefferson and from the neighborhood, some middle school, some high school, because these projects will take long enough that we think those middle school students might actually be around long enough to use the new library facilities, whereas the high school students might have gone to college.
Yeah, sorry, can I just, that's great, great explanation. So I'm curious about the outreach to various groups. I saw that you have names and emails, and I'm just unclear why, like these neighborhood groups, have you sent emails to them yet?
No, like Tyler said, there's a lot of names on the list. We're not doing them all at the exact same time.
Okay, well, I'm a little puzzled about why that would be. I mean, I got as a library patron, I got an email that went out to maybe the whole library community, certainly people who are using Albina in North Portland. And so I'm just wondering why all the groups on your list that you have emails for, why weren't they all included in kind of one big email blast introducing this effort?
Yeah, I can jump in here. That's actually logistically, we have some like mail merge issue just on the library side of getting big mass emails out for new contacts or contacts that aren't already signed up for listservs. So this was actually one person manually emailing all of these people. And so we were doing it in kind of chunks to manage it for their time and sanity's sake. But yes, so thank you for pointing it out, because we do need to be sending out emails in the same outreach for the neighborhood association. So I actually will flag that for that person to send out.
So
Liz, did you want to jump in?
Like by what date will all those groups have been contacted? Is that something that you'll do in the next month, by the end of the year?
Yeah, we can do that within the next month. Like I'll flag it for it. It kind of depends on what timing that person will have to be able to send these out, but the month seems doable.
Okay. Because I don't understand why that wouldn't have happened before you started doing these Zoom sessions, these community listening sessions. I mean, that just seems like something that would be a no-brainer to do, you know, well in advance of when you're going to have a public feedback opportunity, these public meetings.
Well, there will be lots of opportunities, and like Tyler said, it's not first come, first serve. So we're doing it at the scale and at the rate that this team is able to do it. So like Suzanne said, it has to be manually entered and folks have to be reached out to. And we will get to all of the folks in here during the project, but it just can't all happen simultaneously. And I think, Liz, you were adding something in the chat that you might want to speak to.
Yeah, I shared the project sequence graphic here. It is in the process of being updated, but essentially the timeline that you see is the timeline that has been approved throughout the design team as well as with the Board of County Commissioners, has been shared publicly on our website. And so I'm also in the process of updating to show that community engagement is going to really run the length of the projects for Albina, North Portland, and really all of the bond projects. And so there is going to be, you know, like the design folks said, and Suzanne did as well, really ongoing opportunities for input. And just to speak briefly to the point of, in terms of mass emails, Suzanne touched upon briefly, you know, we've had the link that I shared previously that I can drop in the chat again, but essentially in order to send out a massive email, we have to have folks essentially kind of opt in to receive those emails. Otherwise, we're in violation of the Can Spam Act. And so we can't just kind of have this like massive, like, here you go. So we're, you know, really trying to be very aware of the outreach efforts and certainly, you know, just aware of the Can Spam world, which I've dove into way too deeply. But just wanted to let you know about that in terms of why those emails were being sent to patrons specifically, but then also certainly sharing all of our events on our website, throughout our social media, to, you know, certainly welcome everyone, and certainly taking down your notes as well.
Okay, so I'm looking here at this graphic, and you know, FY22 obviously starts in July of 2021. And so the engagement period for Albina is scheduled from July through, it looks like the end of November, maybe December. So, you know, the engagement period is wrapping up, and by your earlier slide, it looks like the North Portland meeting in December is the last one. Certainly that's the only other meeting you've mentioned.
On those slides, actually, we showed other meetings that were coming up not only in December, but in schematic design and design development. While we don't have dates for those will happen.
Right, okay, but schematic design and design development, that would be in the next phase. That would be in the green phase, correct? The design phase?
It means that community engagement is happening within those design phases called schematic design and design development, not only in this beginning phase, which is programming and community engagement.
Okay, but I mean, isn't this just as important? This is an important phase as well. Engagement, that programming, that, I mean, my understanding is that is supposed to chart the course on what the design is supposed to look like to match what the programming needs are for the library locations. So, you know, I'm really puzzled here why it would be getting to the end of the engagement period and there's still a number of groups that have not been contacted.
Michael, it's not the end of the engagement period. The
well, according to your chart,
it is going through all of the design phases.
Yeah, but it's the end of the engagement period is marked on this project sequencing chart.
Yes. Yeah, every phase has a name. We could call it schematic design and community engagement, programming and community engagement, design, development, community engagement, but we don't. So we're just saying that we're beginning with community engagement before we get to design, but that doesn't mean that we're stopping community engagement. I know it's not super clear based on the graphic that you're looking at, but
Yeah,
it really is
because I think
outreach
the
throughout
concern,
the process.
yeah, but I mean, the process continues up through construction. So at a certain point, the design will be finalized. And at that point, you know, changes to it will be really not possible. So,
Michael,
you know,
it
would be nice to know at what point
your comments.
It would be nice to know at what point, you know, what's the cutoff for input into these libraries, you know, that can still be taken into account when designing them. I don't see that. Is that the end of the design?
Michael, that's not something I can really tell you right now. Design is a process. But I guarantee that we're doing community engagement through the process. And I would really invite you to come back to more of these events so that you can see how it's happening. But I can't lay out all of the dates for you right now. That's just not possible. This is a really long project. But
okay, but
I do
on
really
this chart,
want to say that I do really appreciate you coming and providing your input and letting us know what your concerns are so that as we move forward, we can really think about those. But we're at about 20 minutes after the event, so I need to let folks go. We have a lot of interpreters on the call and other folks who we need to record and get our captions going. But
okay, so just to clarify,
you
you said when I asked before about the date by which all those groups will be contacted. Is that, can you commit to doing that within, you know, before, like what, maybe by, you know, 7 days before the next meeting? What's the, if the next meeting is December 4th, like how soon can you commit to having all those groups contacted? Is that something, it seems like something that could be done within the next 7 days.
Hey, Chandra, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. We're not
Katie.
going to make a commitment right now to reach out to every one of those hundreds of groups we have listed. I do think you've given us really good food for thought about our immediate neighborhood associations that we can look to, but I think we need more conversation and more decision-making, especially when it comes to equity around our community engagement and how we're emphasizing voices who maybe haven't been invited before. So I'm just going to be real clear and say we're not going to make a commitment, but we're going to really look at, especially the neighborhood associations that you were most interested in. We can do that, but I'm not going to even ask the teams here, these multifunctional teams, to make a commitment. We're not sure that we can, one, that serves the project the best way it can in the next 7 days, or two, of resources we don't know if we have. But I hear you. I know what you're saying. And I think we can get to those neighborhood organizations in a more intentional way. I kind of understand why they haven't yet, because we have been prioritizing equity and working with groups who haven't always been invited to the table or had a strong voice in how our city, county, local government runs. So I really do appreciate that. Like, gosh, I was like, let's do some more work with those neighborhood associations, but we're not going to make commitments at this meeting today for what we're going to be doing in the near-term future.
Okay, so then what that other person said earlier about being able to send those emails in the next 30 days, you're retracting that, or you're?
I officially am retracting that. I know where Suzanne's coming from. I know what we're trying to do, but we can't make that commitment at this phone call.
Okay,
so
that's unfortunate.
I welcome you to come back and be with us again in our other community meetings that are going to be happening. You'll see those again by email like you did this time. You'll see them posted up in the library. You'll see them posted up around town and on social media. So you can come back and share more with us, but also feel free to reach out to the folks who provided their emails for direct contact.
Yeah. And is this going to be the
questions?
Is this going to be the last Zoom meeting? It looks like the next one is an in-person only.
No,
Will there be
December
future Zoom
8th.
meetings?
December 8th.
So the December 4th is in person, and December 8th there'll be another Zoom?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So we'll see you at the next Zoom or at the next in person, either way. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. And again, thank you all so much for coming and for sharing your thoughts with us. We look forward to doing it again in less than a month. Have a great Saturday, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.